Buenos días a todos. Sin más preámbulos, les voy a presentar al señor William Grace. William Grace es un líder futurista de educación, es coautor junto a Julie Coates de los libros Nine Shifts, Work, Life and Education for the 21st Century y de su libro más reciente, The Pedagogy of the 21st Century. Grace es también autor de Advanced Teaching Online, uno de los libros más populares en el tema de enseñanza en línea. Más de 6.000 profesores de educación superior han tomado sus cursos en línea sobre esta área de contenido. Es consultor, escritor, orador y presidente de la red de recursos para el aprendizaje, LEARN, por sus siglas en inglés, que es la asociación líder en educación continua en el mundo con más de 5.000 miembros en 20 países. En el 1998, Grace convirtió su organización en una virtual y el libro Nine Shifts es el resultado de su investigación y de su experiencia. Ha sido entrevistado por The New York Times, Los Angeles Times, Washington Post, Wall Street Journal, National Public Radio, NBC News y Wired.com, entre otras. Maureen Gillis, vicepresidente de la Asociación de Oradores de Ontario, Canadá, ha descrito a Grace como un orador de clase mundial. Grace ha sido orador principal en Japón, Rusia, Australia, Albania, Eslovenia, Canadá y a través de los Estados Unidos. El reportero de negocios globales de BBC fue enviado desde China a River Falls en Wisconsin para entrevistar a Grace y a Coates acerca de su libro Nine Shifts. Este programa de radio fue transmitido y diseminado internacionalmente y la BBC describió a Nine Shifts como una lectura fascinante. El Instituto Americano de Arquitectos ha dicho, desde Megatrends de Naismith, ningún libro ha sido capaz de dar en el blanco con tanta claridad. Me place dejarles con ustedes a William Grace.
Thank you very much. It's good to be here. We're just going to test the AV a little bit here and see if we're working. And we are. Thank you very much, Dr. Colon, Dr. Ruben Garcia, Dr. Rafael Garcia, Dr. Sanchez. It's good to be here. I'm going to take you on two magical trips, one back 100 years ago, and then go fast forward into the 21st century. I'm wearing the bowler hat here today because 100 years ago you could tell how much money a man made by the kind of hat that he wore. And so rich people wore a top hat, and most people weren't rich, but the rich people did. And then the working man wore a cap, or a Panama hat would be the closest thing here in Puerto Rico to what the working man wore. But there was a new class emerging, and it was called the middle class. And African American and white men from the middle class wore this hat. It's called a bowler or a derby, as a symbol of the growing middle class. You, of course, are part of that middle class, and your mission and mine is to grow that middle class. So we wear the bowler hat in acknowledgement of our very important mission in education. I come from a state called Wisconsin. Jenna, who's talking tomorrow, is also from that state. Wisconsin and Puerto Rico have a few things in common. We have forests, we have blue water, we both do not have any poisonous snakes. We have manufacturing as the primary economic activity. We have baseball. Maldonado is going to do great, don't worry about it. We also have a brain drain in both places. And then we have something else in common. I can't remember what. Oh yes, we have that in common as well. I'm going to ask you to stand while I give you the 30-second summary of my speech. So you're only going to be standing for 30 seconds. But here's the deal. You are the most important people in society right now. We are moving from the old industrial age into a new age called the knowledge era. Very quickly, in just 20 years, between 2000 and 2020. This happens very fast. And we have to transform our institutions. The system of higher education today is broke. Your university model is broke. You're not alone in that. Don't feel like, oh, poor me. The healthcare system, the government, the corporations, the stock market, the tourism, all institutions are broke. And they can't be fixed. But they can be, and they will be transformed. And so this period right now, 2012 to 2020, a very exciting time to be alive, a time when you make a difference. You always make a difference. You've always made a difference in your teaching. But in this particular moment, there's so much more at stake. There's Puerto Rico at stake. There's your grandchildren at stake. There's our role in the global economy at stake. And those things are also where you come in. Now you can sit down. So that's what we're going to talk about. So I just told you that I grew up in the state of Wisconsin and I live there now. But for 20 years I lived in the state of Kansas. And I don't know if you know this, but Kansas has mandatory continuing education. In order to gain residency in the state of Kansas, you have to take a class on the Wizard of Oz. So I signed up for my class on the Wizard of Oz. And it turns out that the Wizard of Oz took place 100 years ago. Now the movie with Judy Garland came out in 1939, but the book by L. Frank Baum came out in 1900, 100 years ago. And Baum lived in a different time. He lived in an agrarian age, an age of extended families and small family farms. There were rich earth, fresh fruits and veg. You could even eat spinach back then. But it was also not just an economic era. It was also the height of morality, the height of civilization. In Baum's view, in the view of your great-grandparents who lived back then. And so people had certain morals, and morality was very important, and moral character was the essence of what you tried to be as a citizen. And Baum saw that his beautiful world was being destroyed. And so he created the scarecrow and the tin man and the lion to represent the virtues of the agrarian age. 100 years later, we are again going through this enormous transition from one era into another. And like 100 years ago, like what your great-grandparents went through, it's not just about economics. It's not just about an iPad. It's not just about a cell phone. It also goes to the very heart of what we believe is moral and what is good and what is responsible. This is an era that you and I grew up in the industrial age, and we feel totally comfortable with this. Cars and suburbs and automobiles, all of which will be gone in 30 years. But for Baum, it was destroying his world, his beautiful world. The height of civilization was being destroyed. And there are people today who believe that their beautiful world is being destroyed. And indeed, the world as we know it is being destroyed, transformed into another. Now, Baum set his story in Kansas. He had never been to Kansas. But back then, there was this newspaper man in New York named Horace Greeley, and he wrote "Go West, Young Man." And people back then actually believed New York journalists, and so 1 million to 1.5 million people moved to Kansas within just a few years. And Baum said, even in this wonderful paradise of Kansas, this awful transition is going on. Today, we are moving from this parents. It's like, is downloading a movie, is that really piracy? Should a patient log onto the internet and be cured by a doctor who's halfway around the world? This is not just about technology, it's also about morality and our ethics. And the driving force, literally and figuratively, of the last century was the automobile. That's what led to the factory, that's what led to suburbs, that's what led to the expansion of your university. The driving force of this century is, of course, the World Wide Web, and that's the man who invented it, the British scientist named Tim Berners-Lee, now Sir Tim Berners-Lee. And it is that technology that is changing society, and it is a force so strong that nobody can stop it. And people tried to stop it 100 years ago, just like they're trying to stop it today. There are people, we have a name for those people, who are trying to stop the 21st century from happening. They're trying very hard in my state of Wisconsin right now. And 100 years ago, farmers tried to stop the car because they knew it was destroying the small family farm. And so in Pennsylvania, they encouraged farmers to shoot at automobiles as a way to stop this transition into the new century. It didn't work, and none of it will work again today. We are moving forward. But it has led to 9 different shifts, and you who have the book don't need to take notes now, but here are the 9 shifts. People work from home. People are 25% more productive when they work from home than when they work in an office. This is going to have a huge implication for the health sciences, medical profession, those that are engaged in. But when you're working from home, you need to connect with others, and so you do that through an intranet. We have a virtual office. Our organization is virtual. I'm in Wisconsin, but my colleague is in Rhode Island, and I have a staff person in North Carolina and one in Canada and all over the place, and we communicate with the virtual office. You're living in a pyramid. That pyramid is being destroyed and being replaced by networks. Trains replace cars. If you're over 40, you're just laughing at me right now like, oh, you're crazy doing that. But if you're under 30, your students all go. Yeah, and I hope it happens sooner rather than later. Shift number 5 is that dense neighborhoods replace suburbs, and I'll talk a little bit more about this in relationship to San Juan. The rich get poor. They don't get poor, but they will have that grading balance of wealth will be more balanced out. Shift number 7, boys lead a change in values. Shift number 8, half of all learning is online. That's what all Title V and your grant and everything you're doing here is all about. And then shift number 9 is that education becomes web-based. Your university will become web-based. It's not now. It's living in the industrial age of cars and factories and pyramids and organizational charts. But it will become web-based. The thing to understand as we go through this transition, which I know causes you much concern and much worry about your students, is that life will be better for your students, for your children, for your grandchildren, than life was for you in the last century, the 20th century. Just like life for you and me was actually better than it was for L. Frank Baum back in the 19th century. Back then, most of the people here in this room couldn't vote. The lifespan was 35 years. The disease was rampant. On and on we could go with that. And so, don't worry. Don't fear this century. Help your students to create it. Now, if you want to know how the internet is changing your university, your lives, don't go to Silicon Valley, don't go to Bill Gates' house, you want to go to Kansas. So I'm working in Kansas, and my brother's in Texas, and he collects antiques, and he finds this brochure from a department store in 1907. And he sends it to me. It's only $1. He says that's all my brother's worth. So I'm totally amazed that there was a department store in this tiny town. This tiny town has only 8 blocks. The police don't answer the phone. There's only one store in the whole town. It's the convenience store, gas station, teen center, Dairy Queen, senior center, all the size of this stage. And so that there was a department store there 100 years ago, I had to find out. So I did it. I finally get a hold of the librarian/historian, and she says, you're in luck. I mean, I called her on Saturday, and she says, you're in luck. This afternoon we have extended library hours. I know you'll love these hours, from 1 o'clock right up till 3 o'clock. So I had to take advantage of extended library hours, and so I jump in my car and I drive to Frankfort, Kansas, and I walk into the library, and there's the librarian. Her name is June Warren. June has not had a customer service class, so it takes a little bit while to get her talking. But finally I say, June, I'm here to find out about the department store that was here 100 years ago. And June says, which one? Now I'm really taken aback. And I say, tell me about Frankfurt 100 years ago. Well, there were 4 banks. The bankers were millionaires. There were 3 department stores. There were 2 opera houses. There was an African American community. There was a racetrack. There was the start of a college. This is a scene from Frankfurt 100 years ago. I've never seen this many people in Frankfurt than there are in this picture. Today, Frankfurt is 400 people. 100 years ago, it was 900 people. This is the department store that the brochure came from. They had the best shoes on earth. They had $100,000 worth of goods, which was like $1 million. There was not a department store in Washington, D.C. or Los Angeles that had more goods than this department store. They had a bicycle factory. They had a switchboard and everything. And I said, June, Frankfurt must have been an amazing community. I mean, it had all these people. It had an opera house and a millionaire. I said, it must have been the metro area. I said, how far would you have to go to find another town with an opera house and a millionaire banker? And she thought half a second, and she said 11 miles. 11 miles. Blue Rapids, Kansas had a millionaire banker and an opera house. That's when I knew that the World Wide Web was changing our lives. We'll call it the internet just to simplify it. But when she said 11 miles, that's when I knew that the World Wide Web would change our society. And then this picture here, this is 2 years later from 1909, and this is the first automobiles in Frankfort, Kansas. And they had these tours of automobiles to show people in the farmland what automobiles were like. And within 10 years, Frankfurt goes into decline. The bankers retire bankrupt and go out of business, and the town dries up. And what you learn is, after World War I, everybody moves to the big cities. And I'm thinking, I don't think that's what happened. I'm thinking, my grandfather farmed this land, my father farmed this land. Why would I get up and move into the big city, into a factory? No. What happened was, back then, as I'm sure here on the island, farms were about 40 acres, and that's all you needed to sustain a family. Not great, but at least you had that. And then they invented something else when they invented the automobile, and it was the tractor. And you not only could plow more acres, but you could also plow deeper. And so 98% of farmers went off the land because you couldn't make a living on 40 acres. And so people moved into the cities and into the factories. And this, of course, is the big change that happened 100 years ago. And we're futurists. We predict the future. We predicted the decline in cars. We predicted the increase in teleworkers. We predicted the recession. You read about that? The recession, yes. That was printed in the New York Times. All of our predictions are coming true. And it's very simple. Nobody else has figured this out. But all you do is you look back 100 years ago and see what happened, and then you predict the same thing is going to happen again. And it turns out to be right. every time. And so this story is not about Frankfurt. It is, but it's also about Puerto Rico. This is what happened to you and your family and your community 100 years ago. And so in just 20 years, we moved from the agrarian age into the industrial age. 1920 was the first year of the industrial age. And so right now, we are moving from the industrial age into the internet age, information age. I call it now the knowledge society. And so we are moving that quickly in just 20 years. And 75% of our lives changed within just these 20 years. So in 2020, 75% of your life will be different than it was in 2000. Now, not everything will be different. In 2020, you will still be reading books. You will still be going to church, synagogue, or mosque. You'll still be watching American Idol. But 75% of life changes in just this short period of time. And we know this because it happened 100 years ago. So if you went back into your house, let's see if the mic's working, yes. If you went back into your house in 1920, you could make supper. You would know how. If you went back into the same house just 20 years earlier in 1900, you would have no idea how to make supper. You'd be clueless. And so 100 years ago, in 1912, my grandmother was an adult educator, and she taught people how to use a gas stove. When I was growing up, we had this term, now we're cooking with gas. I knew it meant we're hip. I knew it meant we're modern. I knew it meant we're cool. I had no idea it actually meant now we're cooking with gas. And so these changes happen very quickly. And we move from one era into the next. And that's what you are experiencing right now in the outside world, and then in your institutional world, and then in your classroom. And this is demographically and economically what happened, is that in 1900, 50% of people lived on a family farm. And that was true here in Puerto Rico as well as in the States. And very few people worked in a factory. But then factory employment grew as the tractor destroyed the ability to live on a family farm. And when you see that crossover, that's a 9 shift. That's where society has to change. Economics have to change. And this, again, I told you this happened here in Puerto Rico. So I have an encyclopedia from 1912. You can't get this stuff off the internet. They don't have this on the internet. But 100 years ago, here's what they wrote about Puerto Rico. And this is from the state's perspective, I assume, but nevertheless. The forests of Puerto Rico have been well cared for. They have all sorts of valuable timber, including cedar, sandalwood, ebony, and willow. The chief interests of the island are agricultural, no longer. 285,000 tons of sugar, 4 million pounds of tobacco, and 45 million pounds of coffee. Now today you're producing 90 million pounds of coffee, but still you only had 1/4 the population back then. You only had 1 million people living on the island 100 years ago, and yet they produced 45 million pounds of coffee. And then my favorite sentence here is, the island has, of course, the telegraph system. That's my favorite line there. It's really up to date. It also says you had a telephone and postal system back then. There's the postal worker. Then it also says this is probably the big mistake made 100 years ago. Teachers have been imported from the United States to train your teachers. It's probably where you went wrong. Some of you are saying, yes, we're doing it again today. Oh. But this is what's happening today, is that factory work is in decline. Here in Puerto Rico, 40% of your economy is manufacturing. Less than 1% is agricultural. And so those factories, as you know, are declining, and work in those factories is declining. But there's this new class evolving, just like 100 years ago. Just like 100 years ago, there is a new class of workers emerging, and they are called knowledge workers. And they are the ones that will revitalize both the state of Wisconsin and Puerto Rico and our nation and make our society prosperous again. Now, we're futurists, but we can see what happened 100 years ago. And so when we went through that, we can see right now we're in this crisis and conflict here. But this is the big thing here right now, is that the old order is declining. It can't be brought back. The automobile can't be brought back. I'm sorry, Google. The new order emerges here, and we can see that happening every day. Your students understand that it's happening every day. Game over, 1920, game over. And so today, the same thing is going on in 2020, game over. What we mean by game over is in 2020, there will still be automobiles, there'll still be some suburbs, and all of that. But if you went back 100 years ago and you interviewed 100 of your students and said, how many of you would like to inherit your family farm or work in this lousy, dirty factory for a dime an hour? 90% of your kids would have said, give me the factory. Today, if you survey 100 of your students and say, how many of you would like to be a medical professional in an office and have a car in a suburb and drive to the office or the hospital every day? Or how many of you would like to work at home and take a train and telecommute? 90% of the kids would say, give me the train. I want to work from home. Let me do that. That's what we mean by being old. And so you live in a pyramid. I used to live in a pyramid until we destroyed our pyramid and became virtual. You don't understand this, but you understand that. 100 years ago, nobody understood that. They had to tell you in the encyclopedia 100 years ago what this was. Your eye is drifting to your box. Once again, you're probably thinking, how in the world did that person get in the box above my box? I still don't understand that. And then your eye's drifting to the box below your box. And once again, you're saying, how come there aren't more boxes reported in my box? That's really, I don't really get that. But that organizational structure is being destroyed because it's not that the last century was bad. The last century wasn't bad. It worked. It produced the highest standard of living anywhere in the world. And globally, if you look up Puerto Rico, it says it's a rich island. We never think, you and I are rich, but when you look internationally, you are. But this is now obsolete. It's outmoded. Like the automobile, it's obsolete. Like suburbs, it's obsolete. This is the new organizational structure for the 21st century. It's called a network. And knowledge workers are who you are producing. You're not producing enough, is the problem. But you are producing knowledge workers, and the deal is we need more of them. Knowledge workers work with their brain and the web. This is what's so important, because even in the medical field, producing something intangible is what a knowledge worker does. It was so wonderful. I don't know the reference to this, but somebody solved a disease. And they didn't do any laboratory work. They didn't have any experiments. They didn't work on anybody. They didn't inject anything in anybody. All they did is they went online and took data from, who knows, let's just say a couple million people, and put the data in order, and they solved the disease, just like that. And that's a world that wasn't there 20 years ago. They need a 4-year college degree. I know everybody who in your area needs a 4-year college degree, but all over, 50% of the people on this island need a college degree. That's the new benchmark. That's the new mission of your university, is to produce 50% of your young people with a 4-year university degree. Well, we've learned also about the 21st century from our son Willie. He's the young man on the left. He's with his foster brother Sammy. So Willie's in middle school, and he comes home from school one day, and he tells me about Jenny Frederickson, the last person who could write cursive. And so I'm staring down at him. Now I stare up at him, but I'm staring down at him, and I say, "You don't know how to write cursive?" And he says, "Well, I can write my name, but that's about it." And there's certain times with a parent you don't know what to say. My mouth is wide open. And well, at first I had to have Jenny Frederickson's handwriting, but then secondly, I think as any responsible parent would do it, we take him out of that school and we put him into a good school where everybody's going to college. You can't go to this school unless you're going to college. And so it's graduation day for high school, and I'm positive and I'm enthusiastic, and I've got a big smile on my face, and I say, "Willie, how many of your friends can write cursive?" And he says, "Who does that?" That means nobody. Nobody writes cursive. And as you know, cursive cannot be stored, cannot be saved. It's like shoeing a horse. It's like canning vegetables now. It's a nice little craft that someone does, but it's absolutely not essential at all. And as you know, in your own profession, cursive is dangerous, and it kills, in the United States, it kills 7,000 people a year. So whenever you see cursive, you really want to, and you know where that comes from. Doctors write prescriptions, and pharmacists can't read them, and 7,000 people pay the price, which is why things are being happening to make doctors keyboard those prescriptions. In hindsight, that was the first major transition into this new economy that Gen Y made. Your students, Gen Y, born between 1980 and 1999, are the ones who are making this transition, causing this new economy to be developed, and it's just wonderful. It's so wonderful standing back and watching them do all of that. And so knowledge workers will make double what the average American made in the last century. But what's really important is that they create 4 additional local jobs. And that's what the factory worker did. Because when you had a factory here, people from Wyoming or Connecticut or Singapore would buy the goods from the factory, and then the money would come in here to the island, and then you could hire retail people and other people, shop people, etc. And with that going, you're not losing just one manufacturing job, you're using 4 additional ones. And so this is what a knowledge worker does, is that when you go online and you produce something that's intangible, the money comes in from Wyoming or Connecticut or Singapore, and once again you can hire people for retail, etc. And the intangible economy is where we have the shortage. We have a shortage now. STEM is the big area, and this afternoon or today, if you ask me this morning, I'll tell you the solution to STEM. But we have a shortage of what will be 14 to 17 million knowledge workers in just 4 or 5 years. So even on the island here, you will have a shortage of knowledge workers. And what that means is we need more people with 4-year degrees. Telecommuting is the silent revolution going up, and much to say about that. Offices are in decline. The big reason is the best people won't move, and as an employer, I don't want my best people to move because they're more productive wherever they want to be. And so 85% of your students want to telework between 30 and 70% of their time. This is really the objective for everybody, business, but also you in the university. So I send Willie to this good school, and I'm working at home. And he comes home from school, and I can't find him. And then I do find him, and he's sitting on the roof doing his homework with his laptop. And that just blew me away, so I had a picture of it. The ability to learn at any time, the ability to work at any time, the ability to work or learn from any place is just amazing. And so I'm really curious to know if this would be applied to the medical field. But 50% of us are most productive in the morning, right about now. but 25% of us are most productive this afternoon after lunch. 20% of us are most productive in the evening, and 6% of us are most productive from like midnight to 3 in the morning. And so what we do in the office is we send 25% of our workforce, 25% of our faculty, 25% of our staff, 25% of our administrators home at the precise moment that they become most productive. How do you compete globally? How do you maintain cost containment? You know, when you're sending people home at the precise moment that they become most productive, you can't. And so we need to work from home or wherever home may be. Suburbs are declining. This is where I'm going, yes, sorry about this. We predicted in our book 10 years ago that suburbs would decline. But then 2 years ago, we put a date on it. And we said suburbs will begin to go into decline in 2012. And 2 weeks ago, the government came out with a report saying, yes, suburbs are now in decline. And the leading housing experts said, yeah, this is long term, and this is the way it's going to be. This is original research that we did 2 years ago. We proved that Gen Y is driving less. In our book, we say why they will. That was 10 years ago. But in 2010, we found the government evidence that Gen Y is not driving. I found the evidence here in San Juan by talking with one of you last night, whose son at 16, no interest in driving. But this is something that the auto industry can't reverse. You can't make Gen Y drive. And the reason that Gen Y is not driving is that time is so valuable. And for all of your students, not as students, it's not about them as students, it's about them as being medical and health professionals for the rest of their lives, is that time is so valuable. Time is their only resource. And so they can't afford to waste 2 hours a day driving around in a car, whether it's to an office or a hospital or a Walmart or whatever. It's not something that they can do. And so when you're riding the light rail here in San Juan, and maybe a train is down the road, or the extended light rail system, you can work and travel at the same time. And that's economically why trains are replacing cars. They're also replacing cars for 2 other reasons. One is that cars are destroying the world. And, you know, for me, 2060 isn't even in the picture. I'm gone, okay? But for your students, the year 2100, the next century, they will be living then. And so, yeah, the survival of the world kind of important to your students. And then, of course, the other one is death. Is that for your students, automobiles are the leading cause of death. And so all of these things are going on right now. And they are going on right here. And you know this map. I don't really. I heard one line is open. So, you know, there's these other lines, and I know you're thinking, oh, the city council just did this, and they're not postponing that, and we don't have enough money for this and that. Yeah, I know. That's happening all over the place. This is going to happen. This is going to be extended. This is transportation here on the island. And so now, I have a second part. But I could also answer some questions. So we just need to see if we have any questions. If we don't, then I'll just keep going. But raise your hand if you have a question. It was that bad, was it? Oh, man.
I just have a comment then.
Okay, real quick on the comments.
Well, we have found a way to work while driving. We get Bluetooth. So you sit there and just...
Yeah, no, you don't want to do that. No, it's being outlawed. So what she was saying is we can work and drive at the same time. No, please do not attempt to do that. So let me translate that into Spanish. Also, thank you very much for your job this morning. Yeah. So what he said is yeah, but you don't have the interpersonal stuff and all of that, and the gregariousness and everything like that, which is something that you don't have. Some of the things that Gen Y is doing is that they are renting space in general offices very close to home, but the people who are working next to them don't work in the same place at all. They work somewhere else. So yes, home will be wherever you want it to be. It will be the juice bar, the cafe, or whatever. But as your employer, you're 25% more productive at home, so I want you to stay home. But thank you. Yes, there are some things that will be lost. Just like when we went from the agricultural era into the industrial era, there were things that were lost, like good cooking, like your grandmother's cooking was just so amazing. And I think it's because she learned on a wood-burning stove. So yes, there are some things lost, but overall, we gain. So let's talk about education in the 21st century. We'll be exploring more of this later on this afternoon. But this is my family. This is my mother after my father died, the matriarch of the family, and this is my brother and his family. And then over there in the middle is Willie, there with the long hair. And so we go there on Easter and Christmas, and so we're there. And my mother, to get the conversation started, says, Willie, I hear you're in confirmation class. And Willie says, yeah. And my mother says, what are you reading? And Willie says, Leviticus. And my mother says, oh, that's interesting. What's your favorite passage from Leviticus? And Willie says, thou shalt not seize thy neighbor's ass. And the entire room erupts with laughter, except for my mother, who's going, that's not what it means. That's not what it means. Now, my mother and my son have the same name, the same genetic code, but they're separated by 3 centuries in terms of values. My mother knew a horse clip-clop on this cobblestone street bringing the milk down in the morning. My son will never know an economic beast of burden. And so when we go through this change, we also go through a change in values. And when we went through that change 100 years ago, if you went back and sat down with your great-grandmother, she would tell you you are immoral. In just about everything that you do, you are immoral. You shop and work on Sunday. You gain money without working. I was put up in a hotel that even has a casino next to my bedroom. And so, like, 100 years ago, you just didn't do this kind of thing. You know, some of you left Ponce and moved to San Juan. That's immoral in the terms of your great-grandmother. Sending your folks to a retirement home and certainly going outside with a hat. And so today, some of the values that you and I hold dear are simply obsolete. They're not bad values. The values I just showed you from 100 years ago were not bad. They were essential to holding society together. And so the values that you have were essential in holding society together, the society of 1950 and 1970, but they're obsolete right now. And so I know you like the 8 to 5 workday. You think people should show up on time. You think time equals accomplishment. The Carnegie unit, when they sit in the chair for someone at 135 hours or whatever it is, we give them 3 credits, and all of that. That's obsolete. And your students know that it's obsolete. Not that it wasn't bad. It was good then, but it's bad now. So my favorite futurist, I'm a futurist, but my favorite futurist is Richard Dean. He says they call it collaborative learning. When I was in school, they called it cheating. And so this is my brilliant co-author with the first Gen Y teacher. She teaches math at North Carolina State University. In her class, you've heard of open book tests, of course. No, you can't open the book. But in her class, during the test, you can speak with your neighbor. If you're over 40, your stomach is churning right now. That's cheating. But she's a math She looks at scores. She sees that students who take open neighbor tests do better on the final exam, which is neither open neighbor nor open book, than students who don't take open neighbor tests. She thinks her job is to teach math, so she does open neighbor tests. And actually, this is a generational characteristic because in the world that your students are going out to, they will work better and more profitably, more productively when they collaborate with other people. There is no single biologist or doctor or pharmacist who can compete with a team of biologists, doctors, or pharmacists. And so collaboration is superior. Half of all learning in this century will be online. I could have said only half. But we will be understanding more the neurology of learning. One of the things we just need to face this, but we need to understand that 90% of faculty have never been taught how to teach. And we have to catch up with this a little bit. Neurology and particularly the limbic system is one of the areas we need to understand in terms of its importance with learning. If you're my age, we grew up on books and newspapers, and that's all we need is books and newspapers. And so multimedia in the iPad is bells and whistles or frosting on the cake. But for your students, multimedia is intricately involved with how they learn because multimedia is how they will be practicing, how they will be discovering new things, how they will be making money, how their hospital, how their pharmacy, on and on. Will be making money. Well, this is my favorite headline from the New York Times. I told you I read newspapers, and I still do. From 2006, the headline was, "We have to operate, but let's play first." So this is Dr. Rosser, and he's a surgeon, and he does lots of surgeries, and in between surgeries, he plays online. And then he decides to do a study of other doctors who play online. It turns out that doctors who play online make 37% fewer mistakes than doctors who don't play online. So I started teaching faculty how to teach online in 2000, and I'd be logging on, and they'd be logging on, and they'd say, "Yeah, but I teach music. You can't teach music online." Somebody else would log on and say, "Well, I teach music online." And separate the bass from the treble. Somebody else would say, "Well, I teach French online." You couldn't do that online. Somebody else would log on and say, "Well, actually, if you teach French online, you do these audio, it's really cool." And then someone would always say, "Well, I wouldn't want to be operated on by a surgeon who learned surgery online. Take that, James. You got nothing to say about that." Well, apparently, you do want to be operated on by a surgeon who operated and learned surgery online. And what that online experience does is it improves your ability. Yes, you go into the operating room and operate on somebody real. Yes, if you're a nurse, you go and you do the shots and everything. But when you learn it online, you cut that time in half. You learn it better. Profitability and productivity increases. And so when you're seeing the kids playing, they're not playing just to play. They're not playing to be. It's so unfortunate that play is disregarded in society because it's the most valuable thing out there. It's preparation for life. And the most outstanding educator of 100 years ago was G. Stanley Hall. And he said, "In right play teaching, we are dealing in the depths and not the shallows of the soul." Let them play. So I was visiting Norfolk State University in Virginia, and some grad students, they were showing me the desks and the chairs, and I'm going, office, get me out of here. And then they showed me this, which is the grad students creating a virtual game for the nursing profession. And it's government funded, so I'm thinking it's going to come to your university whenever it gets completed and gets released. And what's going to happen is that in every profession, not just yours, but in every profession, people will be doing gaming online as a way to learn what they're going to be practicing moving forward. And this is where it's all headed. Where you are in a factory, you don't think of that, but you are. Everything that you do is the factory mode. And that factory has been destroyed, and we need to put it together, not the factory, but we need to put the university together again. But we need to do it in a different way, and this is how we need to do it. We need to create an education system that is customized and personalized for each individual. And the web is a gigantic step towards doing this. They say in the last century there were dozens of jobs for millions of people. In this century, there are millions of jobs for dozens of people. So, when I was growing up, you had a doctor. That was it. It was a doctor. Now, there's no such thing as a doctor. I mean, there's, 100, 200 specialties, and those specialties keep growing. And individual strengths differ. And so we'll need to inculcate, to grow, to strengthen each individual's individual strengths, because we will have no idea what they will be doing once they leave the university. But we know when all we have to do is find one strength, all they have to do is find one strength, and then they will have a job, because people will value that. I have a son who's autistic. He has Asperger's, strain of autism. And so this book was really amazing to me, The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime. And it's about Christopher. He's an autistic teenager, and Mrs. Gascoigne is his teacher. Mrs. Gascoigne said they didn't want to treat me differently from everyone else in school, because then everyone would want to be treated differently, and it would set a precedent. But that's exactly what has to happen. Right now, you say, I treat my students equally, meaning I treat them the same. But they're not the same. Neurologically, strength-wise, personality, every, dimension you want to speak to. And so you will need to treat each student differently in order to teach them equally and to treat them equally. And so education gets transformed as we move forward. By 2020, we'll know the model. I'm not saying the model will be in any of our universities totally by 2020, but we'll know the model by 2020 moving forward. And before I tell the final story, Willie now, you never know what Willie's going to look like when you pick him up from the train. But before I tell the final story, we have just 4 minutes for questions, and then this afternoon, of course, I'll go into more. This afternoon, I'm very nervous about this. I'm going to teach you all. I'm just calling you doctors, but I'm going to teach doctors about sex, and I've never done this before. So I'm very nervous about the whole thing. It's my first time, so it's going to be exciting. Yes, way in the back. Yeah, I can't hear you. So did you hear?
Greatest demand. Where in what field of work do you believe the field of greatest demand?
Employment. Yeah, no. The career counselor, it's gone. Don't try to be a career counselor. Don't try to tell any kid what jobs are available and what he or she should go into. No, that would be nuts to try to do that. We have no idea. Half of those jobs aren't created yet. And as I say, there will be jobs. Right now, we say there aren't any jobs out there. Around 2017, the 2016 presidential election is going to be key in the United States. But regardless of who wins or whatever, around 2016 or 2017, our economy will start to expand again, and there will be more jobs for the kids. Part of the reason is a lot of us here will retire, but there will be more job opportunity. Yeah, but trying to determine where those jobs are, no. I mean, the biggest one for me is data analysis. That is going to be a
huge field. Hardly anybody is employed in it now. But in this room, you could come up with 50 different occupations for data analysis. Yes?
Hi, excellent talk. I really admire what you're saying. I just completed a year ago a doctoral degree completely online with Stu Summer Institute after 20 years of teaching and learning face-to-face. So I really can relate and see how people still challenge how can you have done a doctoral degree only online. And I can tell you, for me, it was the most life-changing experience, seeing how much more you learn as an online student, and the social interaction that you need. I learned how you can really integrate it in online courses and still have that community, student community that you can develop. So I'm fascinated, and thank you for being here.
Oh, good. Thank you. And thank you for that comment. Yes, for your students, being online is the real world. Now, they understand this world. They understand the physical world, and they do understand the difference. But online, certain things can happen that can't happen in this room, including virtual labs and many of your experiments. And yes, and the other thing is yes, you do get to know people online. They become very close to you. So, thank you. And maybe one more, and then we'll move on to a better speaker. No, I really want to move on to the better speaker. Okay, good. Well, let me just finish. So, Willie is out in Portland, Oregon, way thousands of miles away, and he's coming home for Christmas or something like that. And I'm reading the newspaper, and there's banner headlines all across the top of the newspaper. Cell phones replacing watches. And I'm fascinated by this, and so I read every word of the article. And then just a gut check, you know, I turn to Willie and say, do any of your friends wear a watch? And he says, none of them, except the rich kids who are trying to show off. And then he says, is this about that stupid article in the newspaper? And I'm tearing my hair out, and I'm going, Willie, the article is agreeing with you. You and the article are saying the same thing. Why is it stupid? And Willie says, because it's not news. Because it's not news. So the last 55 minutes, not news to your students. They can't tell you that up here, but down here, yeah, they understand all of these things are happening. It's a very exciting time to be alive. Your mission, your teaching, even more important now than ever. Your students do value the knowledge that you have. They are listening to you while they are texting. They will become good medical and health professionals, and you will make them become better. And that will not only make for a better health profession, but also it will revive the economy in both Wisconsin and Puerto Rico. I'm counting on you. Thanks very much.
Buenos días a todos los compañeros, colegas que están en la mañana de hoy aquí. Me toca el placer de presentarles a nuestro próximo conferenciante, el doctor John M. Anderson. Así que brevemente les voy a dar algunos datos sobre el doctor Anderson antes de que él pase al frente. Desde el 1 de marzo del 2008, el doctor Anderson es el 11º presidente del Colegio Estatal de la Universidad del Estado de Nueva York, del sistema de SUNY. Antes de asumir dicha presidencia, el doctor Anderson sirvió desde el 2004 como vicepresidente ejecutivo y rector en el Colegio Harvard en Ontario. El doctor Anderson ha asumido varias posiciones administrativas en diversas instituciones, incluyendo vicepresidente de Desarrollo Institucional, decano de Desarrollo de Estudiantes y vicepresidente de Servicios Estudiantiles. Entre el 75 y el 91, el doctor Anderson tuvo varios cargos académicos y de enseñanza en el Colegio Estatal de Alfred, SUNY Brockport y el SUNY Geneseo. A través de los años ha sido consultor de varias organizaciones, incluyendo Middle States Commission on Higher Education, el Departamento de Educación de la Ciudad de Nueva York, la Fundación Empresarial para el Desarrollo Educativo FAPADE en El Salvador y la Delegación SUNY en Turquía. El Dr. Anderson es perito en planificación estratégica, avalúo institucional y en varias áreas de sustentabilidad y compromiso cívico. Recientemente se ha convertido en miembro fundador de la Academia de Futuros Sostenibles de Salzburgo. Posee un doctorado en filosofía en educación de la Universidad de Cornell, una maestría en física de SUNY, un bachillerato en física de SUNY en Brockport y un grado asociado en matemática y ciencia del Colegio Comunitario de Westchester. Así que él como estudiante ha caminado todos los niveles del sistema universitario, ¿verdad?, que conocemos. Así que sin otro detalle adicional, los dejo con el doctor Anderson.
Buenos días. What a great job Bill did. Thank you so much. I took a lot of notes and I learned quite a bit. I think the green arrow means go. That's not going. I hear a noise in the back. Here we go. Some there. Whoops. Boy, I went too far. All right, that's who I am. By the way, New York State has many things in common with Puerto Rico, just like Wisconsin does, except we do have poisonous snakes. We have rattlesnakes in New York, if you can believe that. I've actually seen one. I'm going to tell you a story. And the story is about vision. And I hope that in the next 45, 50 minutes, my intent is to inform you, to inspire you, and to excite you. And notice I didn't say incite you, I want to excite you. So I do this through a story. And it's all about vision. I'm a firm believer in vision. And I share about 13 to 15 visions with my colleagues back at my school. And one of them is to have every Alfred State College graduate have a life-transforming experience by participating in a civic engagement project. Now, why am I sharing this vision with you? And by the way, I think about this vision every day. I've experienced it with some of our students. And when in a few days we have our commencement, and every graduate that walks across the stage, I shake their hand. And my vision is that every one of those graduates has had their life transformed by a civic engagement project they've been involved in. Now, how do we come up with this vision? It wasn't my vision alone. It was a collective vision, as many visions should be. Now, but I'll talk about my role in promoting the vision in just a minute. But how many of you remember the story about the Enron Corporation? Okay. When I took over at Alfred State College, I was excited. We had a new governor. His name was Eliot Spitzer. How many of you have heard of Eliot Spitzer? He was one of the shortest serving governors in New York State. Okay. But a few weeks after I took over as president, I called the governor's office because I wanted him to come down and talk at our college, because we're going to celebrate our 100th anniversary of the founding of our college. I was on the phone to Governor Spitzer's office at the same time he was doing a press conference in New York City resigning as governor. And how many people know the story? He had a little bit of an indiscretion problem in Washington, D.C., resigned in an embarrassing way. It reminded me of another situation very close to Alfred State College in my experience many years ago when I was raising money for the college. I was able to convince a very wealthy businessman to give us $3 million for a building. And it was a pivotal gift. If we didn't get the $3 million, we weren't going to get the building. How many of you may not have ever heard of this company? It's a cable company called Adelphia Cable. Okay? Did you have Adelphia Cable? Okay. Adelphia Cable was founded by a man, the name of John Regas, who lived in our community. He started that cable company back in the 1950s with an investment of $100. He bought the license to an antenna on top of a hill in Cottersport, Pennsylvania, and started amplifying the signal to the homes in the valley, because you couldn't get any kind of TV reception back in the 50s in those rural communities. John Regas went on to, he was an RPI graduate, an engineer. He went on to create the 4th largest cable company in the country, Adelphia Cable. I got to know Mr. Regas. He got to believe in what we were doing. He gave us a $3 million gift. The first payment came in so we could hire the architect for the building. Waiting for the second payment, nothing's happening. Calling Mr. Regas, no answer. Would not return the calls. And finally, within a few days, he was arrested, along with his son, for embezzling money out of a public company. A company that he founded, but he went public with it. He forgot that he didn't own it anymore, I think. And he was using corporate money for personal gain. Thus, I never got the $3 million for the gift, but we did build the building. And then, soon after the Elliott Spitzer situation, the financial collapse of Wall Street happened. Everybody remember that? Fall 2008, I think you may have referred to it, Bill. And what happened there? A whole issue of greed. People really extending the credit of people who could never afford to pay back some of those mortgages. And we had a boom time until it all started collapsing. Now, after that, I had a local congressman resign in disgrace. 2 other congressmen soon after him in New York State resigned in disgrace. What did all of these people have, the politicians and the corporate leaders, what did they have in common? They all graduated from colleges and universities. Some of the finest in the world. Harvard, Yale, you can go down the list. I don't know, or maybe UVA, but the Wall Street guys had MBAs from the best business schools in the country. John Regas went to RPI, one of the top engineers. All of these leaders had a college education, and we were failing them in some way. Bill talked about values and how they change. Well, I guess they do change somewhere when they enter this university system and they go out and have responsibility. There are many people in power who take advantage of it. So at the college, this really bothered me. So I said, what can we do? We're graduating people that don't have integrity. Where are their values? Where is their leadership, responsibility? So we decided that we were going to focus, even though we're primarily a college of technology, we were going to focus and take responsibility for our students to become better citizens. That was the vision, okay? We wanted students to have life-transforming experiences while they were at our college to make them better citizens and make good decisions and choices and act responsibly in their leadership roles. That's where this vision came from. And we live it, I live it, I see it, I feel it, and I imagine it, and I share that with my colleagues all the time. So how do you take a vision and turn it into reality? And that's really the essence of where I'm going to go today. And we'll have to speed it up just a little bit. So you start with the vision of what you want your institution to be. By the way, this transforms into your personal lives as well. Okay? You can make it an organizational vision, or you can make it a vision of your own personal goal and development. So the vision is a noble one. How many times have someone said, like the vision I just shared with you, you want to have every single graduate across your stage have a life-transforming experience related to giving back to society in some way. And you can imagine, I'm sure at your school you don't have this, but right away, there were faculty members, deans, administrators said, but how are you going to do that? We don't have the money to do that kind of, we can't do it. All of a sudden, there are all the obstacles that start getting in the way. And I implore you, as a leader, and you all leaders, to your students, your leaders, to some of your colleagues, your leaders. We had a lot of leaders up here, by the way, congratulations on your 10th anniversary. But you can all get to your goal. You'll figure it out. It will happen. But you have to believe in it. You have to imagine it, not every once in a while, every day. I wake up in the morning every day, I think about how we're going to create that vision for our students. But it gets down to the fact that you have to have some kind of plan to get there. And often we use the term strategic plan because we're going to be strategic. We're not going to go, I used to work for a president who thought that every idea was a good one. I don't know if you've ever worked for anybody like that. Every idea that comes across the table, we're going to do it. And we had 154 different strategies to get to the same goal. And of course, you know what happens. You get exhausted. So you have to be strategic. So this is a very busy chart, and I have copies of it if you want it. But this is what we do. And it really ties in all the elements, and we'll go through them specifically. But you have to have some strategic plan with a mission, a vision, values. We had a very excellent workshop on creating values for our college. The 3 core values, excellence, integrity, respect. They have a lot of subcategories to explain that. Goals, and what we did, I really hate to waste time. What we did was we tied our strategic planning process into our middle states process. Okay, we're going to start our working groups in the fall for our next self-study. The working groups are going to address a total analysis of our current strategic plan. Look at the mission, look at the vision, look at the values. We're going to assign that all to the working groups. So instead of having a separate strategic planning process and a separate self-study and periodic review process, we've coordinated so we only do it once. Okay? There's only one committee the faculty have to serve on. We'll kill 2 birds with 1 stone. Of course, you have to have the lofty goals. And we have 5, not too many. And then each goal is going to have a number of different strategies. And I'll go through these, some examples of this to illustrate. And then each strategy is going to have separate actions. Some may only have 1 action. Some may take 2, 3, or 4 actions to achieve the end result. And how we tie this into assessment and budgeting, which is very important for good outcomes. Every action we look at in January as a leadership team, just to see if we're on course. But every summer, we devote a 2-day retreat to assess every action to see if we're on course or not. And if we're not, we feed it back and we revise the action, or we revise the strategy and try something different. So we're continuously reviewing. The strategic plan should not be a document that stays on the shelf. The strategic plan should be a living document that you are using all the time. Our reports to our boards are based in the framework of the strategic plan. So we tie the assessment on an annual basis to the strategic plan through assessment in the summer. We adjust the budget because when we come up in the next year in the fall, we start our budget discussions. We use the assessment of our actions to say, we're wasting money here, let's reallocate to a different methodology. Or to assign a budget item, a line item to the action as we develop our budget. The budgets can either fund strategies or actions as well. So this is the template that we use. It's highly networked. There are a lot of people involved at different levels, so let me go through that with you. We call this, again, so a document doesn't sit on a shelf. We get people involved throughout the whole process on an annual basis. The president's role is very simple, but in some ways it's the most difficult. It's to promote the vision. When I go to any kind of meeting, I have 3 opportunities throughout the academic year to meet with the whole organization. One time at the beginning of the fall semester, one time at the beginning of the second semester, the spring semester, and then at the end of the spring semester, coming up next week, as a matter of fact, we have our annual recognition, which is a very, it's a light event. We recognize people who've won awards or whatnot, but it's the opportunity to have everybody in the room and remind them of the vision. So the slide I showed you early on of our students in Haiti, by the way, one of our nursing club raised money to go to Haiti 2 summers in a row, about 20 of them for 2 weeks to help rebuild a medical facility there. And that was, and has been, and will continue to be, a life-transforming experience for those students, to hear some of the stories of their experiences. And we have a number of projects like that all over the world, as well as in our own neighborhood. But everywhere I go, I have images. I go to a board meeting, and I bring images of the future, whether it's a new building or this vision, imagine every Alfred State College graduate having a life-transforming experience through civic engagement. I never let people forget about it. That's my role. And I do it in many different ways. The leadership of the college, and we do, we have the pyramid. We're working on breaking that pyramid down in different ways. But right now we have a leadership group, the vice presidents and the deans, as I'm sure the University of Puerto Rico does. You probably have many more vice presidents and deans because of the size and complexity of your mission in the university. But the leadership, the senior leadership of the organization is responsible for the 5-year rolling plan. And we do something what we call goal set through. Have you ever heard that term? Goal set through? Well, you've probably experienced or witnessed the phenomena when people set goals. Probably the easiest analogy is in sports. I love to, a good friend of mine used to own a hockey team, and I go to the locker room and I hear the TV interviewers talk to the coaches and the captains of the team, and they say, well, what's your goal for this year? We're going to make the playoffs. Oh, great, okay, the Stanley Cup playoffs. Now, the team is focused on that goal. And guess what? They're so focused, they make that goal. Then guess what happens? They don't win the championship. You know why? They didn't goal set through. Their goal was to make the playoffs, and they did a darn good job of making the playoffs. But they forgot the other goal. And by the time they realized it was too late, they wanted to win the championship. but they only worked all season in making the playoffs. You have to goal set through. You can't set goals and lay idle. We are always setting new goals. So we keep our strategic plan rolling out year after year. It never ends. We just up it another year. So we continuously revise it, change it when we need to, but we're always looking beyond the original goals we set. So it's called goal setting through. And our role as a senior leadership group is to assess and revise that on an annual basis. Then we have a leadership group, and that's everybody, department chairs, directors, the deans, associate vice presidents, myself. And that's where we get together a number of times during the semester. And we imagine what life would be like when we achieve that goal. Okay, we're changing our athletic league. And the coaches are very reluctant. Change is a big deal. And a lot of people don't like change. There are a few people who thrive on it, though. So we do imagining sessions. And so I said to the coaches, imagine if we went to this league. What would life be like? And pretty soon they start thinking about it. They start seeing themselves in the future. Just like what we have to do with Bill. We have to start thinking about ourselves in the future and preparing for that new life. Driven by forces that we have no control over. So those people who are reluctant to change are going to be left by the wayside. So as leaders, whatever leadership role you have to help people imagine what life is going to be like without driving a car, getting on a train, working from home, preparing the students for that future. Imagine what that's going to be like. That's what drives us. And then we have to develop the strategies. Because we can't do it all the time, every way possible. We have to be selective because we are restricted in some sense by our resources. So continuing with the vertical alignment, because it's one, you can't as a leader have this vision and have these goals and then walk away and expect everybody to say, oh, that sounds great, I'm on board, let's go. You have to work it, okay? You have to work it with continually imagining what the future is going to be like. The campus community role, the students, the faculty, staff, volunteer, they participate in the assessment of where we are. They do it through student learning outcomes, surveys, our alumni tell us how we're doing, our business partners tell us how we're doing, and we collect that information and we feed it into our assessment. As I mentioned, we've just switched into a 5-year cycle. A typical strategic plan lasts for 5 years. I don't know why. Maybe because we can't think beyond that. Bill thinks out 20, 30, 40, 50, even beyond. So we tie it into middle stage. Rather than have a 5-year strategic plan, we have a strategic plan that just keeps going on. But we take time. We take time every 5 years to stop and have the whole community get involved with thinking about who we are and where we want to go. Hundreds of people. It's a long process. But now we're going to do that with our middle states accreditation process, which all of you, how many people have participated in some of those self-studies? Look at all the hands, okay? And I'm sure in Wisconsin you have, what do you have, Bill and Jenna in Wisconsin? What's the accreditation? North Central, I think it's called. There's 6 commissions around the country, and I don't know where you are in Virginia, or yeah. There's 6 commissions around the country who do this accreditation process. And why do we do that? We do that to satisfy the federal government that we're credible. And then the government lets our students have loans and grants and, Title V. Thank you very much. Yeah, there you go. It's a virtual applause. So it's very reasons I am very, very involved in middle states, and I serve as an evaluator, team leader, because I truly believe in peer evaluation. I learn as much from my evaluations as I think I impart to the institution. And if you think about it, the alternative isn't very nice. The alternative is very simple. The federal government will get involved in accrediting colleges and universities before they let their money out. So I think it's a very important process, and we have to pay attention to it. Documentation is essential in any kind of strategic planning process and assessment, and we'll talk about some of that in just a little bit. But I have a public document. I have one with me. I'll show you those who come to the workshop. We have a working document. This is our working document, many pages that we update every year. We put that on the web, on the intranet for everybody to see. It's a very transparent process. And then we've created dashboards, and I'll show you some of those because I know some of you are into data collection and sharing. But I do it for a somewhat different reason, and I'll share that with you in just a minute. So this is something I truly believe in. When you set your goals. And I'll tell you, for most of my life I didn't believe in this. Because, I don't know, maybe some of you don't want to admit it, but I used to fear failure. I used to fear it. So what would I do? I set my goal safe. I'm gonna make that goal. That's why when someone said to us when we're working on this vision of every student having a life-transforming experience, they said, well, how about just 50% of our students? I said, what do they do with the other 50%? Set your goal high. Okay? Set your goal high. And I love this quote by Michelangelo. So let's go back to this vision. Again, I have about, I can't keep track, about 15 of these that I share that impact a lot of different areas of the college. This is just one I'm using as an example. And I do this, I say imagine. And I keep bringing them up to the faculty and staff to remind them all the time. So let's just dig into this. And how do you get from a vision to reality? Well, this looks really not as glitzy. This is the work. This is the primary work. This is a template. And by the way, I have this on. I sent the link. There's probably on the website you can get this. So what kind of tool do you use? Well, we created this. This is just I think it's an Excel spreadsheet. And I got a great person on my staff who does this for me. And this is the model we use to keep us on task. And I'll go through it with you just very briefly. And again, I think there's about 60 pages of this for the whole institution. But here's one example that relates to this vision. There's a strategy. We want to create a more vibrant community. One action is build a student leadership center. One of the reasons we decided to do this was to put a focus on student leadership. We're going to, instead of a student union, we're going to build a student leadership center. The building's going to have a theme. And the theme is, in the desired outcome, to recognize facility emphasizing student leadership through civic engagement. Now you see how it's going to start supporting our vision. We're going to focus on student leadership through civic engagement projects. The KPI, that's acronym for Key Performance Indicator. We're going to create a concept paper and architectural design showing the student leadership to be a state-of-the-art facility. We want to attract the best architects in the country to help us design this facility. And the other indicator is that we're going to have national publication or organization recognizing the facility as such upon opening fall 2013. So we haven't gotten there yet. But every year, we measure the progress. Now let me talk to you about the importance of vision again. You notice in the base year, this is how we document where we start, 07-08. $33.5 million secured for new student leadership center in April 2008. And we're going to talk about how you fund your strategic plan. There's primarily two ways you fund it. You either have to get external funding for an initiative through a grant, or donations, or you reallocate. Okay? 2 ways to fund your strategic plan. New money or reallocate. And I'll talk about, this is one of the techniques. Now, let me tell you how powerful visions are. I came across my state senator, and she wanted to know how things were going at the college. And I shared the vision of every student. Now, I had no idea I was going to build a student leadership center at this time. I had no idea. Don't worry about it. Where are you going to get the money? Don't worry about it. Have the vision. Because when you have the vision, you constantly talk about it, and you never know who's going to listen. So I'm telling the state senator about this vision, and we've done a couple of pilot projects, and how I told a story about taking students down to New Orleans for a semester. They're construction, engineering, technology students, and how they spent a semester rebuilding homes that were damaged in the 9th Ward, still from Katrina. And I talked to a student. I went down there to help tear down some rafters and put up some new ones. And talking to the student who'd never been outside of New York State, and he's in New Orleans, okay? We're in the 9th Ward. And he's living there and he's working there every day, along with a faculty member. And he stopped me one day, having a bite to eat. He goes, Dr. Anderson, when I graduate, I'm coming back here. And I'm going to work with this organization to do this. That's the life transformation that I'm talking about. I have a number of those stories. And I started telling them to my state senator. She said, well, how are you going to do that? I said, well, we have a lot of strategies. One is, I want to build this building that's going to be unique in higher education. And I envision people coming from all over the world to see what we're doing in there, because we're going to do it differently. So she said, how are you going to do it? So I got to tell you the story. We're going to use the existing framework of our student club and organizations. They already have presidents, vice presidents, etc. We have 90 clubs and organizations. And I'm going to offer up an opportunity for those clubs and organizations to submit a proposal to us on how they're going to use their leadership skills in their organization to engage in a civic engagement project. And the best proposals are going to get the prime real estate in this new building. They're going to get a 2-year lease on a leadership suite. Okay? It's just like a storefront where they can sell their project and their club and organization. And they have to have outcomes assessment. They have to show us that they're making progress through their civic engagement. Now, what does this do? You build leadership skills. One way is through projects. Students have to identify the problem, they have to design how they're going to solve the problem, they have to implement it, they have to raise money for it, and all those things that require leadership. And we'll help them along the way in terms of training and whatnot. And then they're going to go and engage in something that's going to be meaningful. And hopefully, will instill a value in them in the importance of giving back to society. That they won't loan money to people that can't afford to pay it back, like those Wall Street bankers. And they won't rob from their corporation for personal gain. And that's how we're going to change the world. The state senator listened to my story and said, how much money do you need? I said, I don't know, $25, $26 million. I got 33 and a half, okay? Because I had a vision and I shared it. Now, I told that story to hundreds of other people and didn't get $33 million. But you know what? It's that old classic show business story, being at the right place at the right time. And we're turning that vision into a reality. So we developed a concept paper. Typically when we build a building, we get 15 to 20 architectural firms to give us proposals. We had 76 proposals come in. I remember my assistant bringing them into my office in cardboard boxes. We interviewed, we screened them, we interviewed the final 6 architects, and I asked them all, why did you submit a proposal? Architects we had never heard from. And they said, because we read what you want to do with this building, and we want to be part of your vision. We hired the #1 ranked architect in the States, William Braun and Associates out of Boston, #1 ranked 2009 by Architect Magazine. And we designed a wonderful building that is going to open up in 2013, and I'll invite you all to the ribbon cutting. This is what we envisioned, okay? And last week, before I came down here, I went and took this photo, and there we are. It's turning a vision into reality. And of course, being at the right place at the right time helps. So, but that's not the only strategy. A building doesn't create a change in values or a cultural transformation in an organization. So we have a number of different strategies. Another action was to create a campus culture that promotes the civic engagement and student leadership opportunities. And so one of the desired outcomes was to build a student leadership institute, conceptually, to assist in raising funds for civic engagement projects. Remember how you tie your goals and strategies into your budget? Because, well, how are we going to do all that? How are we going to fund all these projects? And we'll find a way. Okay? We started with $4,000. Our goal is our KPI is to raise $100,000 annually. Notice that the base year, if you're looking at the format, the base year changed here because this was not in our original plan. So as we revised the plan, we added this action because we realized we needed money. So we added this action. And you notice I tie it on the upper right-hand corner. The State University of New York, one of the largest public universities in the world, has their strategic plan, and my boss, the head of the State University of New York, wants me to tie my strategic plan to theirs, and so I did, and here it is. And then we also focused on the 4 R's, which is recruitment, retention, reputation, and revenue. So we started raising money in 09 and 10. Last year we upped it to $45,000. And then if you notice over on the right, there's a little progress arrow. This is so people can quickly see how we're doing on our strategic plan. This is great for Middle States institutional effectiveness. I think it's standard 7. They like to see you continuously looking at this, analyzing it, tying into budget. I'm pleased to announce that when we finish our year this year, when we go into our summer retreat, I think we may have just hit our $100,000 annual goal to help students fund their projects. We're not going to give them the money, they're going to have to earn it. But we will be able to assist them now. By the way, that new building you saw, it has a high elements rope course that pops down from the ceiling. It has a 3-story rock climbing wall in it for leadership training. One of the challenges in the design, they couldn't find the footprint big enough for the rock climbing wall to start on the 2nd floor to go up to the 4th floor. It's 4 floors. And William Brown was in our design session at the time. It took us 14 months to design this building. And he goes, well, why don't you just pop it up through the roof? So now our rock climbing wall goes up through the roof. And the goal is when you get to the top, you can see out over the valley. So you'll have to come and visit. Here's another thing that just came up last year. Notice the base year, we don't have any data because we're going to collect the data this year because we continuously assessed our progress in getting to our vision. Okay? We said, it came back to us through assessment of the staff saying, you know what? Our advisors they don't have any idea of what we're trying to do. So we started action, training club and organization advisors and promoting civic engagement initiatives. Desired outcome, have 13 proposals approved for Student Leadership Center storefronts by March 1st, 2013. And the KPI is 13 storefronts assigned. This year we're going to have three awards given. We're going to have 3 of those leadership suites assigned by the end of this year. so we'll be on track. We used to call them storefronts because it reminded me of an interior. The vision was like an interior mall, a shopping mall, 2-story, where you can see up above and have a balcony of stores. And that's what this is going to look like inside. But I didn't like the idea of making the analogy of a shopping mall, so we changed it to leadership suites. A lot more. Okay. The other thing I want to point out here, and let's see if this laser pointer, oh, it does work. Okay, right here, you have to hold people accountable. So every action has someone accountable. That means that's the Vice President for Student Affairs. So at our leadership retreat in the summer, the student, oops, oh gosh, I hit the wrong button. There we go. Oh, he's trying to override me. There we go. Okay. The Vice President for Student Affairs is responsible for collecting the data. They will fill out this form before we get to our retreat. So right here, in base year, he will have identified how many storefronts have been assigned. Okay? If we go back, same student affairs person, well, we'll find someone else. So this is to illustrate once again that there are many different actions to support a goal. We have someone held accountable. We have the assessment indicators where we collect data, and the data takes on a lot of different forms. As you can imagine, your goals get related to student enrollment or academic affairs or how much money you're spending on research. You can assign a certain key performance indicator to track. But every vice president has responsibilities and actions that they have to collect the data and fill this in before we get to our leadership retreat so we can assess it. I'm sorry if that's too much detail for you, but some of you like detail. I just thought I'd share, we talked about how do you fund a strategic plan? Well, you saw a couple different ways. I happened to get funding through an outside source for the building. Could we have done this without the building? Yes. But you know what? The building's really going to put a focus on it. We talked about how to get the funding for this Student Leadership Institute. We're raising money, very targeted. It's a very compelling case. We decided we could raise money, and we've raised close to $100,000 this year, which is a lot for us. We're not a very large campus, a little bigger than your medical school. And the other way is reallocating. You can reallocate to fund your strategic initiatives. Would you all agree, and I think Bill would agree, that nothing stays as important as it once was? Things change. And I'm always going around the campus saying, why are we doing that? And when I don't get a good answer, guess what? We stop doing it. And it's not that we fire people, we just redirect them. Okay? Because we have a lot of skilled professionals on our campus. So this is how we funded a lot of the strategic initiatives. I'll just point out some of them to you. The action was to increase efficiencies and maximize revenue. The desired outcome was to reallocate $1 million annually to strategic initiatives. And the KPI, of course, is how much money do we reallocate? And this year, we didn't reallocate anything, okay? Now, you say $1 million. All right. Our all funds, just to give you a handle on this, our all funds budget's about $50 million. On the part that we, and a lot of that's the residential life side, but if you just take the academic operation, it's about $26 million. So I said to the faculty, I said, if you really had to do it, could you become 5% more efficient in your operation? Oh yeah, you can do it in your personal budget. Could you be 5% 5% more efficient in how you spend your entertainment budget. You know, so maybe you don't get filet mignon, you get something a little less. We can all do it. So I challenged the organization that we could become 5% more efficient. Do we really need to teach that course with 3 students in it? Well, no. Maybe you could teach it every other semester. Now, some of these things are controversial, but you want to achieve something important, you work at it. So if you take 5% of $26 million, all you scientists and mathematicians, what do you get? 1.3 million. Son of a gun. Now, when I said to the staff we're going to reallocate $1 million, they nearly had a heart attack because they said, oh, they're going to eliminate my program. No. We're going to do this through efficiencies. Everybody worked toward it. Everybody worked toward it. And so here's some of the results. I won't go into the detail with you, but this is how you chart it. So across the top is the year. Here's our base, or next year. We reallocated $336,000. What did we do? We increased our marketing budget. We put money into international student recruitment. These are, by the way, every single one of these, this is the important thing. Every single one of these has a number, A1A. What do you think that means? Goal A, strategy 1, action A. Everything here is tied to the strategic plan. Again, the middle states evaluators love this because you have your plan tied to your budgeting, okay? So, for example, academic equipment. The faculty were complaining, we want more academic equipment, okay? So we pledged to reallocate $150,000, and we did it. We created an Institute for Sustainability. I point this out because notice what happened right here. We started with 45, 90, 90, and then look what happened here. Went away. We assessed that initiative in the 3rd year and said it wasn't meeting our goals. We hired a director for the Institute for Sustainability. The intent was to raise a lot of grant money, et cetera, and coordinate it. It just didn't work. I had 2 directors. Our focus in sustainability in our institution is 2 primary areas, renewable energy and organic and sustainable agriculture. And I had 2 directors that were raising all kinds of money and they were doing all the coordinating. We didn't need this, so we stopped it. We didn't have a dean. I added another dean to the college, so you see that coming in. So you see over years things are added. And notice what happened, $336,000 the first year, 2nd year, $881, and look at that. Last year, we hit over $1 million, $1.269 million reallocated to fund strategic initiatives. And we haven't assessed this year, but we've added a few more things over here that we'll assess at the end of this year in June. So that, my friends, is how you can, one strategy of how you can reallocate funds to fund your strategic initiatives. And again, it's a very transparent process because everybody gets to see what's happening. This is all published. Anybody can access this information. And of course, there are a lot of people who are advocating for their initiatives to get funded first. Just to show you some other things that we do as an example. We're going good. This one I just put here. What does that say? Those of you in the front can read it. Outcome met as of 9/1/10. We celebrate when we do something, finish it. And we have this in our public document. We have, at the end of the document, we have all the outcomes that we've met. And we celebrate it. People feel good about that. We created a couple of dashboards. These are SUNY dashboards. Someone was asking about where we get all of our data. Well, we collect it internally. Every key performance indicator has data that's collected either internally or, I guess in a way, we're fortunate that we have a large system, and the system keeps a lot of data, such as this. You can go on the intranet You have to have someone authorized to get on there to get it. But this is an Oracle Business Initiative Interactive Dashboard that the State University of New York provides for all of us. We can get on there and look at enrollment trade. There's so much data out there, you'll never use it in a lifetime. And some of it's even nice, little graphs here. This is a history of enrollment, but for a program. You can easily see it. It breaks it down into, disaggregates it into different programs. Very user-friendly. The challenge that I was mentioning to someone yesterday, the challenge with this data system is that it's not up to date. It's some of it's old data. So hopefully the system will get up to date. We can use it. We need immediate data on an annual basis, and sometimes the data in this database lags by a couple of years. But and I don't know if the University of Puerto Rico has a common database that you can access and look at, but that's something you might want to work for within your system. But we use it when we can. And then we create some of our own dashboards. And here's just an example. And I want to go back to our story about vertical alignment. If you notice, this you have to access through our intranet. As soon as you log on, this pops up. So it's in your face. This one happens to be campus beautification evaluations, okay? Now, why do we have campus beautification evaluations? Well, going back to one of our visions, I post to the campus all the time and say, imagine walking on this campus and it doesn't look different than walking on the White House lawn. And I have visions of the White House lawn in the spring with the cherry blossoms and magnolia trees. So I'm trying to put that vision in our grounds workers and our maintenance staff. So there's something on this dashboard menu for everybody, including the grounds people and the maintenance staff who clean the buildings, because we evaluate periodically visitors to the campus, and we ask them to rate how they think the campus looks. So now the cleaners and the maintenance people can actually get online and they look and say, oh, we got to get going here. We're slipping in this one area, or we're getting better in another area. So they have access to that. Some of the other dashboards, I think there's one on budget, whether you're going to meet your budget target or not. There's one on fundraising. There's one on enrollment. So, and they rotate through. So every time you pop up on the intranet, you see a dashboard that you can design and custom make to your life. So I leave you, I believe, with this quote, another favorite one by our friend Abraham Lincoln: determine that the thing can and shall be done, and we shall find a way. And if you believe that, and you believe the Michelangelo quote of setting your goals high, you're going to be in great shape. So with that, I'll open it up for questions and try to provide some answers. Questions? Yes? The question is, what were some of the toughest experiences in terms of creating the vision and the strategies? Probably the toughest experience was non-believers. Poor self-image. We could never be like that. And that's the role of leadership, to show them they can be that way. I mean, one of the things we did, one of our strategies here is to get our faculty to encourage the students and faculty to enter competitions. So I'll just tick off a couple that they've done the last year. Our IT students participated in a cybersecurity contest in Boston, the Northeast region. It's a great contest. We have a pedagogy of project-based learning, okay? And that's what we really believe in. So they entered a contest, and they had to protect the computer system from hackers. It was a real live system, real time. They set up a computer system, the students had to go in and protect it from external hackers. And then they get rated with all kinds of categories. Well, they didn't win the competition. They came in 4th place. The first day of the event, the announcer is announcing the top 3 people, the top 3 institutions. They said, okay, in the top 3 we have MIT, University of Massachusetts, and Alfred State College. And everybody in the room said, who's Alfred State College? So our students were head to head with some of the best institutions in the world. They came in 4th, they did beat out Harvard, they beat out the University of Massachusetts, okay? And the students came back, let me tell you, that was a life-transforming experience. We have a mechanical engineering technology program, an automotive technology program, and the students entered a contest because one of our themes is renewable energy. And the students took a 2003 Honda Insight first generation hybrid vehicle, and they prepared it with 5 weeks notice. They prepared it, they gutted it, changed the suspension, changed the tires, they did some work in terms of controlling the hybrid mechanism, overriding the computer. Interesting thing, a hybrid lives in the moment. It doesn't know what's ahead. It only senses immediate needs. So we entered the Watkins Glen Green Grand Prix. Anybody ever hear of Watkins Glen racetrack in New York? It's a very, very famous racetrack. It used to be Formula One racing, now it's NASCAR, and very famous road track in upstate New York. So there's an organization that hosts the Green Grand Prix, which is to try to get the best gas mileage. But they go around the racetrack. The rules are you have to go for 2 hours, and you can't drop below 45 miles an hour. So the driver knows what's up ahead. But a hybrid lives in the moment. But the driver, if he knows the road, can predict what's up ahead. So we used that knowledge and took over the control of the brain of the hybrid system, plus a lot of other things we did. And we took 1st place in our division. And we beat out the Rochester Institute of Technology, which is a big private institute of technology. They got 94 miles per gallon. So they got excited. This fall, they're going out to the Bonneville Salt Flats, and they're going to try to break the land speed record for a hybrid car. So these are the kinds of things that inspire the students, inspire the faculty, and they start believing in themselves.
I just have a question because we can all see that you're a very smart president. And as a dean who ran for president and didn't get elected, I want to ask you if that guitar there is just in case no one asks you a question, someone asks you, why did you bring it to the front?
Thank you so much. I was hoping someone asked me, what is the guitar doing here? So there's another quick story. I think we'll have enough time because I'm the only thing between you and lunch. We talked about vision, okay? I'm going to see if I can do this. We talked about vision, and no, not yet. I might though. And I want to know that as a young man, very young man, growing up, I wanted to be Bob Dylan. Everybody know who Bob Dylan is, famous songwriter, singer. And I've never have stopped thinking about doing that. Many decades later, because you never know, just like the $33 million being at the right place right now, you never know when the opportunity is going to arise where you might have a captive audience and a guitar. So, I have my guitar with me today, and I've been playing guitar for a while. I'm not a very good singer, but I just learned how to play the harmonica, which covers up for my lousy singing. And I've never written a song. Does this microphone work here?
Yes.
Can you turn that up? Okay. Oh, beautiful. And I might need someone over here. So, on the way down from New York, on the plane, I wrote my first song. ones, that's close enough. You were the first ones that are going to hear this song. We're going to get a little closer here. And I was so impressed with your singing that if you feel compelled to join in, okay? Hear that? Yeah. So I wrote this song in honor of you. It's called Vision. Well, I got set right key first, right? You get this right. It's really odd. Believe in your vision, supported by a mission, have your goals set high, you'll be fine. Know who you are, and don't fear what you see, have faith and stay the course, so shall we. Now remember lesson one, what Lincoln had to say, determine the thing, can it shall be done, and we shall find a way. Believe in your vision, supported by your mission, have your goals set high, you'll be fine. Document success, and for little state success, make your dashboards up to date, communicate. Have a clear message sent through vertical alignment, buying is the key and you will win. Now you believe in your vision, supported by your mission, and your goals set high, you'll be fine. Now here comes the harmonica. Aim high, not low, said Michelangelo, don't let fear get in the way of what is here. Now as I leave you here today, there's one last thing to say. Thank you for this hospitality. Believe in your vision, supported by your mission, have your goals set high, you'll be fine. Have your goals set high, and you'll be fine.
Un aplauso de pie. Excellent presentation by William Grace and Ron Anderson. We are very glad to have both of them here in Puerto Rico. And now we are going to our launch anniversary.
I enjoy a lot. I'll leave you with that song. No, I think it does. If you want to take a photo with it.
El almuerzo es en el segundo piso. El almuerzo es en el segundo piso.